Okay, so in this video, we are gonna compare Rive versus Lottie. So let's just go ahead and deep dive into that. Okay, so here basically we have the Lottie files community, and you can see there are basically multiple forums, and you can go through those. And yeah, you can basically learn what the community is saying, what the community is doing, and you can see that basically this is their community. Okay, and then there is the Discord of Rive also has a community, by the way. Let's just go ahead and let me Rive community, let me just open that up. Yeah, so we can compare a few little things. Okay, so this is the community for Rive. Okay, so let's just go ahead. Yeah, so there are a lot of feature requests. There is some general chat going on. Okay, so yeah, let's just go ahead and now first talk about some things which we should. Okay, so in the previous video, we were discussing that we can basically, yeah, gonna compare Rai versus Lottie. So Lottie revolutionized how designers deliver lightweight linear animations for web and mobile. Rive is solving a bigger problem. We are on a mission to make hard-coded graphics history with a new general purpose graphic format for all software and UI, and animation is just a part of the puzzle. With an end-to-end pipeline for designing, building, and running interactive graphics across platforms, Rives moves past linear formats to enable interactive and responsive visuals. So the custom-built Rive render ensures smaller files and faster performance without compromising designer freedom. This guide compares Rive and Lottie across key dimensions to help teams choose the right tool for their project. Okay, so as this states, Rive is basically not just replacing Lottie, right? Both tools offer different type of solutions, in simple words. Best for interactive UI responses, and output basically is production ready graphics with state driven interactivity and live inputs. Just as you can see, the get started button is here, right? Just like we discussed before. And Lottie is basically a lightweight linear animation for marketing websites and app interactions. JSON based linear animations with limited interactivity. Exactly. So, and then you can do a lot of new stuff as well. There is a responsiveness layout which you can basically not do it in Lottie. It's not basically just something that you can do. Data binding is not basically a part of Lottie domain. They have recently introduced motion tokens, but that does not exactly work the same way as Rive's data binding. And Rive's data binding offers much more complexity and offers much more intuitive possible results. Okay, and then there is the feathering announcement. We will get into that a little bit. After that we have masks, and yeah, basically these are actually all documents, and these stuff is basically added. And then GPU accelerated rendering as well on top of that. And then basically, yes, let's just talk about this. You're gonna basically do the design in Illustrator, animate in After Effects, and then you're gonna export using body movement plugin, or you can use the Lottie files plugin as well. And then you can run the Lottie JSON file, which is basically .json format. We have discussed all of this particularly in my previous courses or classes. You can check those out if you want to. Highly recommended. We have covered tons of different complicated projects, and the UI animation principles are actually same. The tool basically just offers better execution. In some cases the lot is better, or After Effects is better. In some cases Rive is gonna be better, but the fundamentals are same. So I highly recommend you checking those out if you are interested in learning particularly about UI animation and grab all the possible information that you can have. So highly recommend checking those out. And other than that, there is basically the library. You can run it basically almost everywhere. Okay, other than that, they have some case studies, and after that we have this interactive footer as well on the website. Okay, so Rive and Lottie, the major difference is the pipeline difference. Okay, that basically the Lottie pipeline is basically this, but the Rive pipeline is actually completely different. The editor is actually that Rive has built. The format is .riv. It is not just a weird format like .json. Now, it's not like a bad thing to have .json animation. It's just that the at the time the technology actually Hernan Tarosi, who is the founder of Lottie, actually created the Lottie format, and he's a genius. I have a huge respect for the guy, and he did an incredible job. But it's just not built to offer that complexity or offer that interactivity that Rive can do actually. So the format .riv can actually be exported from Rive itself. So no other software actually exports it. The runtime is actually built by itself, the Rive team, and then the renderer is also built by the same platform. We have covered a lot of different issues in the classes, in where I teached all the different kind of animations that we can create using Lottie animations by using After Effects. And in those classes you will see a lot of stuff which is not actually translating the way it should. We see something else in After Effects and something else on the web. And it's kind of weird, even when we are using the supported features. But that is not going to be the case in Rive. I have been using Rive over a year now, almost 1.5 years, and I have never faced some weird issue like this. There has been some weird issue only with when someone is not using the right renderer for Rive. You have to actually sometimes enable it. When basically they launched the new renderer, and they had to do some kind of switching, and at that time there were some issues, but after that there has been no other issues. Okay, and if you have some information about Lottie, you will know that it does not offer glows basically, right? A huge plus point of using Rive is that it can actually offer vector feathering. Now, what is vector feathering actually? Let's just search vector feathering in Rive. Okay, and basically it is just a tool which basically allows you to add blur. Simple as that, right? But you can do so much more using the blur here. You can basically manipulate the blurs, you can create all sort of animations, and you can see really nice effects are created by it. And the blur can actually be interactive. You can see that the mouse is moving, and basically the cursor is actually getting followed by the glow effect, right? And you can see amazing stuff created by using the blurs, right? Now you cannot do this stuff particularly using Lottie. Now these are some game changing stuff. Other than that, there is other stuff as well that I would like to cover, which is the, let's just go ahead and let me show you that case study, which is, yeah, this one, Notion one. I have been noticing a really interesting let's just say revolution that Rive has basically created, which is that basically all of these huge companies are using Rive to create the interactive animation. Now, Notion is something that most people would be aware of, and all of the AI animation of their assistant are actually interactive, and those are created using Rive. Now, nobody is using Lottie. I don't know the reason behind that, but I actually tried out Lottie Creator by myself, and I don't think that the tools are really intuitive. For example, in Rive, basically, when you create a animation, what you can basically do is you can start from one animation state, and then you can go into another timeline. Basically, let's just consider that this is composition of After Effects, right? So one composition into another transition, simple as that. But Lottie does not work that way. In Lottie, you have to work in one composition, and then you have to basically lock down the work area, just like we would do in After Effects. And then you have to cut down those sections, and then attach those sections, and then create the animation. I don't think that's really a nice way to work around, because I tested it out, but I didn't really love the results as well, and it was very confusing to use for someone with my background who has been using After Effects. I don't know if, and that's just me being biased, but yeah, I haven't really seen some really major projects recently created inside Lottie. So, other than that, there is one really important thing to mention here, which is that let's just go ahead and check the Lottie Files platform. Okay, and let me show you something really nice. Okay, so let's just go ahead and look at the customers. Yeah, let's just see all case studies. Okay, so you will see here that it says Duolingo, and let's just click on that. And you can read a lot of stuff here. Now, how actually the Rive basically came into existence is, the story is basically simple. Basically, Duolingo was the first client or the user of Rive. Okay, and the team actually started using Rive for the first ever time, I think, because this is not just made up information. Guido Rosso, who is basically the founder of Rive, they basically mentioned this in a podcast or in an interview. And yeah, you can see Guido Rosso, CEO at Rive, so twin brother of, I'm not sure, Luigo, I believe, is the, yeah, Luigi Rosso. Yeah. So these two are the CEO of Rive, and incredible dudes actually, and very supportive, and they're really one of the most easiest CEOs to reach out to actually. So I really appreciate that how Rive team is developing the tool and how they are so responsive all the time. So it's really something surprising for me. We'll get into that in more detail as well. So basically, Duolingo basically actually has, currently it is using Rive, and Rive was basically not a public tool. It was just being used by Duolingo most of the time. And then basically what actually happened is that some other animator discussed this with Guido that they should maybe launch, because some other people would also like to use it. Now, Joy Koranman from School of Motion has also mentioned something regarding Rive, that it is really an amazing tool. Rive is the greatest new tool for motion designers of the past 10 years. It lets you do what Flash used to, but in a much more powerful way. Now, I am not really that old that I have worked around Flash, to be honest. And but basically, when they launched Rive, a lot of people were really happy that the Flash is back and it is so much better now. So maybe who is someone who is experienced enough using Flash, they would know what it is actually regarding. Other than that, there has been some really incredible other case studies as well. First of all, the Duolingo, as we have discussed, has currently basically were the first client or the user of Rive, and they basically has shifted completely to Rive animations. And the Duolingo character basically can do. We are basically now covering that what Rive is possible of doing, and basically the you will, if you read all of the details, you will notice that all of these sounds actually are basically different mouth rigs, but these are basically attached via backend with the data binding, and that way basically you can see that how they have actually transformed everything, and the mouth basically moves on the basis of how the words are being said or which sound they are producing, and the data binding basically triggers those mouth movements. Now this is all happening in real time. The super Duolingo feature, the paid feature, actually allows you to video call Lily, and Lily is basically using the data binding feature from Rive, which is really surprising, and it is basically talking to you, and it is basically listening to you and responding to you by, because that data is basically attached to Rive animation, and that is translating into the animation as it is triggering different inputs. Okay, now it could be really hard to understand, but in simple words, let's just say that number one is mouth closed. Let me just go ahead and open a Figma, and let me just illustrate this better. Okay, so let's just have a look at what I was trying to tell you. Okay, so let's just say that this is a mouth. Okay, and we have different poses over here, and this is, let's just say, the tongue or the close or the opening of the mouth, and then we have basically some different sounds coming out of the character's mouth. Okay, and basically let's just say that we have these four different inputs. Okay, so these are just four different mouths, and let's just hit one, and let me just scale it up. Okay, okay, and basically now this is just to simplify the illustration purposes only, so that you can understand the concepts. Okay, so let's just say that these are the four poses, and they have to basically juggle in between them. Now basically when the user is basically speaking, Lily is not speaking anything, right? So basically let's just say the number 3 is the closed mouth, right, like this. Okay, and basically this one will be activated automatically because the data is basically listening, and the animation has the condition that when the user is speaking you have to activate number 3, but as soon as the user stops you have to then respond using different sounds. Okay, so let's just say that this is the sound of A, and this is the sound of T, and this is the sound of F, right? And then basically it is trying to say full. Then for one frame it will switch to here for FOL, for example, something like this. So FOOO and then L. So it is gonna do that automatically because the data binding is attached to that, and the logic has been created in such a way. And basically something like this is actually created in Rive, that you can see, the data binding being connected to each other, right? So something like this. You can see structures like this in Rive animation all the time. So this is how basically it is working on the back end. Now let's just look at some other examples as well, that how Rive is actually different. Okay, and why I am actually thinking that it could be potential use case or a tool that you should learn for UI animation creation. Now if you notice the Lottie community or the Lottie Discord, you will see that there is no activity. You will see that there are only there's only one message in July. Nobody is responding. This one is, I think, moderator. Other than that, you can see the community is kind of dead. Now they have officially announced that the community has shifted over here. Now let's just go ahead and have a look at the chat, and you will see that on July 22 there is two messages, and then we have July 21 one message, and then basically you can see that the difference. So basically the entire July or in an entire month is basically covered within 20 or 30 messages. That's it. So basically not a lot of talk going in the community, and it doesn't seem that a lot of active users are actually using it. And even if you search on LinkedIn, stuff like that, you won't find many cases where people are creating stuff like this. And maybe because there is limitation to Lottie features, and other than that, I don't think that there is any particular reason for this. Maybe the tools are limited because there are a lot of features that are not included other than just the blur or the data binding. For example, let's just go ahead and have a look at something else, which is meshes. So let's just go ahead and let me just search for meshes in Rive. Okay, intro to meshes Rive. Let's just open a bunch of links so that I can show you what we can do. So you can see you can create these weird complicated structures, right? So basically these are images, simple images. Just you can add basically meshes on top of it and then animate stuff pretty simply. Lottie does not offer this feature, and the JSON format basically supports that you work only around vector format. Rive basically solves that issue as well because you can work around meshes and it does not lag the file, because you can see that how the meshes are working. You can create some really complicated animations out of it, and I've tried it myself. I'm not really that great with meshes, so my experience is very limited with this, but it does not lag. I'm pretty sure of that because you can see here how beautiful this looks, and this is just one image or two image, or just divided few images on in Photoshop, and then you can just attach them here. Really important thing here to mention is that you can also import Photoshop files in Rive, and then you can work with those as well, pretty easy. And if there are effects on added on top of those layers, they do not basically create much issues. And other than that, one really important thing to mention here is that there is another tool in Rive which is known as the bone tool, which actually offers the rigging. Okay, and you can rig basically using however you want. And this is something really amazing. Lottie does not offer all of these features. You cannot create some really interactive animations, and kind of create character animation is really a concern here, because everybody is trying to create a new Duolingo, because Duolingo, or basically the trend of the UI has shifted a lot in the last few years. Basically, not everybody is trying to create the most minimalistic app. Even if something like Notion, who is basically known for their minimalism, is actually using a animated mascot here as well, which represents their AI, right? And most of the companies basically trying to go for a mascot animation approach, where their entire identity is basically attached to a mascot or a character that basically guides the user through everything. For example, there is a really nice example which is Bite Paul, something similar to Duolingo's character, and you can see here. And in all likelihood, I think that this was created in Rive as well. I'm not really sure because this is not mentioned somewhere, but if you research somewhere, then you might find the team behind it as well. Okay, and other than that, you can attach audios as well. There, I haven't really used audios using Lottie actually, because Lottie actually exports the audio in a separate file. But actually, it comes back to that same discussion that has been mentioned here. The entire animation, sound effects, everything is inside one single file, the .rif file. But that is not the case when you are exporting a JSON file, because the audio file is exported separately. And then you have to give that to the developer, and he will have to find a way or attach it somehow. And also, one really key important thing to keep in mind is that Lottie does not offer the interactivity, whereas what actually Rive makes better is, and what basically is the huge benefit of using Rive, is the problem solving aspect, which is that if you are creating the animation, you do not have to, it's not just that the tool can do interactive animation. The tool basically allows you to add all those interactions inside the creator or the software itself. So you basically do not have to give a lot of headache to the developer or the backend, team. Basically, you can add all the interaction here. So it is basically can be handled by the animator slash designer slash the developer who is doing the animation, right? You can do all the create all the logic here, and then basically you just have to simply attach all of that data with the backend. That's it. Pretty simple. You don't have to type in those conditions that if the mouse is over here, then just make it bigger. You don't have to do all of that. You don't have to go through all of that headache. And basically, what we are trying to do as an animator or as a designer is basically solve complex problems. And if you're going to create another problem for your client, then it's basically not adding value to the project, or you are not basically becoming a problem solver for the project or the client, right? So the amazing thing here is that you handle all of that by yourself. You're not just creating extra mess for the development team to handle. And also, really amazing thing here is that you can also see stuff like this, that it also flags out the problems. There is a console which actually shows you that what you are actually doing in the animation. Okay, and then you can do some testing here as well. There is some changes. There's so much in Rive that you can do. And also, really very important thing here to mention is that the community aspect. Okay, now because there is a lot of discussion going on in, let's just say, the Lottie server is basically kind of dead now, maybe because they have shifted over here, but you can see that there is not much discussion going on over here as well. But let's just compare it with the Rive community. Now you can see, let's just scroll down and see how much messages or chat per day is going on. So it's day one, and we are going up, we are going up, we are going up. It is day two, and then we have day three, and then you have day four now, and not much going on this day. So obviously this happens, and then yeah, a lot of messages, and you can see that people are basically sharing and creating stuff. Now let me just go back to Lottie community or chat. You don't see really people mentioning stuff like this. So here some issue is mentioned. Other than that, not really stuff being created by the community, right? And whereas let's just check Rive community, you can see that there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, and there's something really surprising here is that it is so much easier to reach out to the team. You can even tag Guido as well. He's basically the founder of the team, or basically the founder of the Rive, as we discussed. And I was basically going through some trouble because I was trying to submit a Contra challenge, but I couldn't actually find a option in the tool. And Guido basically replied me because within an hour, I think. And if he does not reach out, somebody else will from the team. So there is constant support going on, which is really amazing. And the shocking part for me is, and I really big salute to the team that they ship the updates really fast. Like basically Rive is basically updates the software on weekly basis, and I'm not kidding. Sometimes it is updating twice per week as well. They are basically sometimes just debugging some stuff. Sometimes they are adding a small little detail that the community has requested, and then other than that, basically you can just share your work as well. So you can share all, you can see a lot of work is being shared here, right? So people are basically creating entire show reels inside Rive, as you can see here, but I haven't seen all of such stuff using Lottie. And really one kind of, I think it will be the final takeaway from this, is that company like Spotify has also used this. Now what they used it for is really interesting, is that Spotify Wrapped is something that people wait for at the end of the year. And I believe that you understand what Spotify Wrapped is, where basically you understand or basically check that what kind of song you were listening to all year. And basically that Spotify Wrapped animation was actually created using Rive. And something really interesting here to notice is that Spotify has so many listeners or users, and basically the data binding has been, for example, attached to the user profile, for example. So because everybody is gonna basically see their face in their Spotify, right? Or every artist on the platform is actually gonna be added on the Spotify wrapped animation. So that is basically done via using data binding. So for example, if we just go back over here, let's just create four circles, so that let's just say that we have four artists, right? So and then basically what we have here is that now definitely there are so many more artists than four, but we are just taking this as an example, right? And basically what actually happening is, uh, through the data binding is, what actually is happening is that, let's just say that I listen to this artist, right? Now Rive, basically Spotify has my data. Now it is basically gonna create my animation on the basis of what I'm listening or which artist I am listening to. Now the current profile picture of this artist is gonna be attached into my most listener, or the artist that I have listened to most will be added over here. So basically the placeholder inside this animation is basically a placeholder. It is basically gonna respond to every single creator that the platform has, and when once it matches that data point, it is basically just gonna pick that data point. Now we are not gonna see all of that definitely, because Rive is really smooth. And why is that? Because as we discussed before, it has its own pipeline, so the animation runs really smoothly, and we haven't really seen any backlash that the animation broke, I mean, if a team like a Spotify using something, then I don't think that there is a point to worry actually. And the Duolingo was basically they are the OG of mascot animations in the UI field, and basically their product is the most animated product on the internet, I would say. And if these tools are using, which are the top tools, like they are the top 1%, right, in their domains, and if they are using those tools, then I think they would be using the best tools, because they are also the best guys or the best companies in their domains or their field of expertise, right? So you can see that they would also be thinking about creating the animation in something that is a scalable, and definitely it is a scalable, and that is why they used Rive instead of using anything else. So I believe that covers everything that what Rive can do, which Lottie cannot. And I think that covers everything what Lottie cannot do, but instead Rive can actually do. So I believe now you have the understanding of what Rive can actually do and what Lottie cannot. And I believe you have learned something new in this video. Let's move on to the next one.